Okay, so let's begin. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this evening. This is a series of talks which we have called Perceptions of Risk in the Himalayas. I am Suchasmita Das. I am an assistant professor here in the social sciences in Ahmedabad University, and I'm also a fellow of the Center for Interasian Research. And what we have been trying to do through this series of webinars is try to get speakers from different disciplines to think about how risk is theorized, conceptualized in their discipline, in how the Himalayas are then made an object of study, and therefore to denaturalize the concept of risk and see how it has been constitutive in shaping the imaginary of this landscape. If you're interested in any of our previous talks, you can go to our YouTube channel and check out some of the anthropologists, historians, ecologists who have been talking about this idea of risk in the Himalayas. So, for example, we had Rohit Nanevadekar last time talking about ecological perceptions of risk. His work is on hornbills and humans and herons and their interactions in Northeast India. So today I'm very grateful to Dr. Jenny Bentley and Minket Lepcha for joining us, and they will be delivering a talk titled Living with the Teesta River, Disasters, Vulnerability, and Other Than Human Relations in the Eastern Himalayan. Dr. Jenny Bentley is a sociocultural anthropologist with a PhD from the University of Zurich, and she has more than 15 years of fieldwork experience with the Mutanchi community in Sikkim and West Bengal. Her PhD research offers an analytical insight into the Mutanchi understanding of an enchanted landscape, ritualized interactions with other than human beings, and epistemologies of protection and endangerment within the fragile Himalayan environment. Some of her recent publications have appeared in places like an edited volume titled Traditional Neighbors, Different Modernities, Bhutan, Sikkim, and the Mon region, and in the journal Asian Ethnicity. Her applied or engaged work has also included an ecotourism project based on indigenous knowledge processes, which has been funded by Swiss University Knowledge to Action. She is an affiliated researcher with ISEK, University of Zurich, a member of SEG Interface Engaged Anthropology Commission. She is the research lead with EcoStream Gangtok and a co-executive director of the NGO Tapriza. So, and from 2021 to 2024, she, along with our other speaker, Minket Lepcha, have been collaborating with the University of Toronto for curating a workshop project in which 40 Lepcha youth discover the sacred lands and collect stories from the regions of Darjeeling and Sikkim. And our co-speaker is Minket Lepcha, who is currently a PhD candidate in environment and geography at the University of Manitoba, Canada. And before this, she has had a long, illustrious career in multidisciplinary forms in advertising, education, marketing, storytelling, curating. She's actively participated in formulating action-oriented methodologies to build water narratives across transnational communities. Her film, Voices of Teesta, which is part of the Netherlands Organization for Scientific Research Project, makes a significant contribution to the understanding of hydro dam impacts, cultural relations, indigenous beliefs, and transboundary geopolitics in the region. This film got her in 2016 a Young Green Filmmaker Award at the Woodpecker International Film Festival. It also won second position in the All India Indigenous Film Festival titled Samuday Ke Saath. And she's particularly interested in decolonial modes of storytelling, as we will see today. And her works have also been featured in the Living Waters Museum and Northeast Water Talks. So I'll now turn it over to Jenny and Minket for their talk, and I will not introduce the talk as much. I'll let them to introduce what they're going to talk about, and we'll have that for about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for conversations. So thank you again, Jenny and Minket, for joining us today, and Minket especially very early in the morning in Manitoba.
Thank you, Suchasmita, for the introduction and also for giving us this platform to speak, for arranging this wonderful series that has covered the whole year now. And so we're happy to be here. I'm also grateful for Minket, my co-speaker, who managed to join us so early in the morning. I will not take too much time. I wanted to give an overview over what we will be talking about so that you kind of get the gist of it. So first we plan to introduce ourselves, and we will still talk about our positionalities, but Sushmita gave such a wonderful introduction. There will not be so much more to say. Then Minket will start by introducing us to the river through well, her methods of storytelling and through the Lungtensung, so the stories of the Mutanchi people. Where Mutanchi are better known as Lepcha. Just so that you know who we are talking about. And then I will share some of insights into the perception of risk and vulnerability within the Mutanchi community, mainly based on my work that I did in Dzongu in North Sikkim, India. And I will be introducing a ritualistic approach to interacting with more than human beings and also mitigating risk of living in the fragile Himalayan mountains. And then after that, Minket will highlight some insights with recent discourses on the river ecologies, livelihoods, infrastructure that she encountered in the aftermath of the Glacier Lake outburst flood in 2023, as last year. Maybe just to add on about myself. So you've heard I'm Jenny Bentley. I have a PhD in social cultural anthropology from the University of Zurich. I'm currently based in Darjeeling. It's been a few years now. And just not to repeat what has already been told about me, but just to add on to it, that so I'm a strong believer in research that is engaged and builds on reciprocity and respect, and especially is relevant for the community members, and also builds on relationship with the people and on their needs and their aspirations. So this is something that has been guiding my research, especially in the past decade after my PhD was finished. And this is also where Minket and I meet and where our projects have been aligned with in the past few years. So I'll pass on to Minket to introduce herself or add on to what has already been introduced, and start our presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny, and also Suchasmita, for both of you, in fact, for giving me this platform to speak. And just to talk about my positionality, I am, an indigenous woman from Sikkim and Darjeeling areas, and we call ourselves Mutanchi because Lepcha is a term which was given to us, and it was not how we used to introduce ourselves. And also, just to talk about when I consider myself a storyteller more than any other, filmmaker or a PhD student, but I consider myself a storyteller because that's what my ancestors used to do. Stories have been a very important part of our culture and living heritage. And I do want to say that I'm an urban indigenous woman and not really being in the village. So I want to kind of put my position into somebody who is learning the ways of my elders and my knowledge keepers. And also, like, I do not know the language, not because I had a choice, but it was a system which never allowed me to speak my own language because I come from Darjeeling. So having said that, I also used the storytelling as a method to kind of connect our children and the youngsters to the landscape, because that's never taught in our school system. And the River Teesta as one of the most important landscape, and Mount Kanchenchu is just probably in the songs and the folklore, but not in our education system. So that's one of the reasons why I used stories as a medium to educate children for the last more than 5-7 years now. And the film Voices of Teesta is one of the film which gave me an opportunity to really travel the river and really feel the river, because I guess we do not get opportunities like that to really reflect on the river and our relationship. And that also gave me a very, very important understanding of how it's a transboundary river. So having said that, that's something which I wanted to add and just kind of bring my positionality to this particular talk. And I'm still learning. I'm still learning the ways of my Lepcha worldview. It's or Mutanchi worldview. It's not easy, especially when you are from a place like Darjeeling, which has a lot of multi-ethnic communities and not have enough spaces to talk about our stories. But yes, I find great pride in the stories that I've been telling. And yeah, that's, I think, more than that, I would probably begin with the best way to introduce myself would be through the story. So, Jenny, so I can probably begin with the story, or how do you? Okay, perfect. So, just to kind of why do I the River Teesta story? Just to give a bit of a reflection, because I actually started telling the story, especially after I realized, after I made the film Voices of Teesta, and there was a lot of people were talking a lot about how I have won the award and how I was like one of the filmmakers, a women filmmaker from, like, that usually they have the Pahar Ko Chhori and stuff like that. But I guess what I felt the lack was addressing the River Teesta and understanding the River Teesta. I think I was becoming more, people were knowing me more than the film. And that kind of gave me a kind of understanding of like why people are not connected with the film, or even if they are with the film, it was mostly scholars and mostly people who understood the value of that film. So when I went to that time I was teaching, so I went and I told them like why, what, where, like where does River Tista come from? Because I was a teacher in AJ's Church School in Darjeeling, and children did not have any answer. The children was like, oh, it's near some bazaar or near Tista Bazaar or Pesok and stuff like that. So I think that is the time I realized that how our education system has been really lacking of talking about local ecology. And I actually use the folktale, River Tista folktale, as a medium to talk about the nature or the landscape. So coming from that perspective, I usually now the journey of even the story, after having told for so many years and going to so many places and children and talking about the value of river, this has become like a ritual, like it has become very personal and very spiritual for me. So before I actually narrate the story of River Tista, I usually seek permission from my spirit, from the rivers and the mountains that I come from. And I also seek permission from the land that I come from, like right now, as I am in Canada, and seek permission for them to allow me to speak this story, because this story is like verses which actually has been narrated for ancient times. So because of that, I will play music, and I will also share a screen. And when I'm doing that, I will also ask you all to just kind of reflect on the reason why you are here, the reason why we are even having this conversation, because I think many of us we are actually in these areas where we are connected with the water inside us. We are also connected with the river inside us, but we do not really reflect on why are we connected and why are we even in this particular forum. So as I do that, I just gently want you to just probably close your eyes for a few minutes, and then not few minutes, but just few seconds. You don't have time, but I will just play this music. I just want to know if you can hear the sound. Okay, Jenny, just give me a heads up. Can you listen? Can you hear? Awesome. So just this is Pantong Palit, which is one of the ancient sounds from Darjeeling and Sikkim, where the Mutanchis used to narrate this flute. It was not to kind of just, it was not an entertainment. The stories are not entertainment. The stories are prayers. And as I seek permission for your bodies to listen to this story, I also seek permission for my voice to be the guide to what the river wants to say. And as you do that, I want you to remember that this sound has a male and a female sound, and together it creates beautiful healing inside your body. And as you breathe in and you breathe out, I want you to remember and acknowledge the river inside you, the water inside you. And I also seek permission from River Tista, from Mount Kanchenchu, to give me a guidance, to allow the story to be the medicine for all of you, and reflect on what we have been doing for so long. And how have we been contributing or destroying the river Teesta? Just breathe in and breathe out. This is the time, it's the ancient time where Mount Conchenshu was as small as a musketeer's tooth. And as you can open your eyes as I speak, this was our elder brother. And this was about the times when the wind used to blow gently and it used to bring the rain. The rain used to fall on Mother Earth, and then it used to gently fall on the trees. And the trees used to say, "Thank you, my dear rain, for bringing water into my body." And the water used to say, "Thank you, my dear tree, for allowing me to fall on your body." And the tree used to blossom into a flower, and then the flowers used to go down to Mother Earth, and the Mother Earth used to say, "Thank you, my dear flower, because of you that I can actually, give birth to so many babies on my lap." And the earth used to thank the river, saying, "It's because of you, my dear river and water, that I have a shape." And the water used to say, "Thank you, my dear earth, that I can actually move around because of you, and I can actually go to a certain direction because of you." So this place was the time when everything was interrelated. We were brothers and sisters. We were not divided. And we were also connected with Mother, wind, nature, river, everything that was connected. And this is also about the times when we were just not a part of Sikkim or Darjeeling, but we were right from Kazakhstan to Arunachal Pradesh. We were the third pole. This is the third pole. We are the third pole. And this is the mountains which used to connect. And we have our, kins with Sokpa or Yeti, and they used to move around from one place to another, not knowing the borders, not knowing which country, which provinces, but we were all brothers and sisters, and all these blue spots that you see were the lakes. And this is the only third pole for Asia that gives birth to so many rivers. So this was also about the times when the medicine was not just for human beings, it was also for the soil. The soil is dying now. So this soil, this tree called Nepalensis alnus was basically the soil that whenever there used to be a landslide, there's another folktale about it. There used to be a landslide, the soil used to grasp this, the roots of this tree used to grasp the soil and say, please, my dear earth, hold till I don't, till you don't go down to don't have a landslide." So these kind of medicine that these roots used to have for the trees. This tree was a medicine to the soil. This grass was a medicine to the human beings, but the leaf was equally poisonous, rhododendron. So these are, plants and flowers, which is found across Himalaya. It's just not in Darjeeling or Nepal or Bhutan, but it is found in Himachal Pradesh also. So these are the place, the Himalaya. There's no S to the Himalaya. Himalaya is only one. So that's the reason why we were all interconnected and different, like, version of the same stories. And this is about so, everyone was interrelated and interconnected, and how we were used to say, like, "I am here because of you, you are here because of them, they are here because of Mother Earth." So this interconnectedness was what Devarum, our genderless creator, was very, very happy with. And that's the time when the creator said, "Why don't I send two human beings, Rangit and Rongnu, down to Nimaya Liang?" That's how we refer to Darjeeling and Sikkim. Nimaya Liang, and let them learn how to live with the land, how to live with the wind, how to live with the mountains, and let them feel like how to practice gratitude, how to practice reverence, how to disrespect. And that's the time then the creator sent these two, boy and a girl, down to this Nimayaliang and asked them to learn the laws of the jungle. As they were growing up, they were really in a, they were just friends with everything, the animals, the birds, the trees, the water, and it was all like these water bodies were all sacred for us. It's not just River Teesta, they are sacred lakes. So everything. In fact, our clan, we have Chu the Lep, where Chu means our sacred peak, our De means a sacred lake, and Lep is a sacred cave. So these three categories makes us our clan, and this is across Darjeeling and Sikkim Himalaya. So this is what happened, like this. They were so like they were connected with these ecosystems, so connected that they actually started growing in these mountains. And as they were growing, they actually madly started falling in love with one another. So much so that they forgot how to pay reverence to the waters. They forgot how to pay respect to the soil. They forgot that the white Mount Conchenchu was just not the white mountain. It was the mist that was being carried from the mountain that became the rainfall and had created water bodies in our system. That's how we used to drink water from these springs. But the human beings were actually losing that respect. And, till now we do. And that's the time when the jungle started getting really angry and started feeling that they are not listening. The love between these two human beings is so strong that they doesn't respect the land. They do not respect the water. And this love is very dangerous because all the time we are asking for, we are always looking for how can we get from the land, and also looking for ways to kind of extract from the land, but we don't know how to give it back to the land. So that's how the jungle was actually feeling very, very um, threatened by this love. And then they decided like these two lovers needs to be separated. And as these two lovers were engrossed in the love for one another, the jungle decided to separate. And somehow Rangit, the boy Rangit, heard this, and boy was so angry that the boy was like, how dare they actually try to separate us? How can they do this? And that's the time uh they were very special beings. We all were magical beings that time, and we were all shapeshifters, not just human beings, but also birds and animals. And that's the time when, the girl started crying. Rangnu started crying, and Rangit said, because the girl started crying, the Rangit said, "Don't worry, my dear. We will have to fight this jungle. We'll figure it out however we can." And she started crying and said, "We are two small human beings. How can we actually destroy this jungle? We cannot." But then the boy said, "Oh, I'm the man. I know the solution." And that's how, he said, "Why don't I bring these two friends, and then they can probably help us move away from these jungles and these friends who are not friends anymore." And then there's the girl was crying, but she said, maybe because we didn't pay respect to them anymore. It's because of the whole idea of like we were supposed to know the laws of the jungle. We have forgotten the laws of the jungle. And she started crying and said, "No, no, no, my dear, don't worry. I am the man. I can help you." And that's the time he said, "I will bring a bird to Tfo, and I will bring a friend called Parilbu. Tutfo is a kind of a partridge, and Parilbu, which is a snake. Together with these two friends, we will go down to the plains and leave this place." And then as they were saying, she was saying, like, how are we going to do? Like, we are water. I mean, we are like, if we become water, then we were formless. Then how can we go? I mean, I will lose my way. And the boy said, "No, these friends are going to guide us." And as with the snap of a finger, these two boy and a girl turned into beautiful river. And then as they were flowing, the Tutfo was taking the river Rangit as to the direction, and then the Rangnu was guided by Parilbu, the snake. And then as they were actually flowing, they decided to meet in Pesok. Pesok in Lepcha means Panzok. Panzok means dense jungle. And now we have a lot of tea gardens in Pesok, but before they were just not tea gardens, but these were dense jungle. And as they decided to come in Pesok, This is the place where you see this is where I took this photo from Pesok. So they said, like, as they were coming down, it so happened that the boy was late and the girl was waiting. As the girl was waiting for the boy, uh, all of a sudden the boy saw this girl waiting, and his ego was hurt and said, Tisata. He shouted Tisata. Tisata means when did you arrive? And that's how the river Teesta got its name. So when did you arrive? And then that's the time the girl was about to say, hey, listen to me. I mean, I just arrived, but then the boy was so angry and really, really almost said, like, you are a cheater. You actually took some wrong way and you tried to come and out me and say, like, I'm better than you. And the girl was say, hey, that was not my intention. But then he did not listen. And he said, you know what? I don't want to go with you. I will go back to the mountains. I don't want to go with you. You can go wherever you want to go. And as it was happening, then the river was now like the very ferocious river, river which we saw on 4th of October 2023. And as just kind of started pulling the land, pulling the trees, the soil, everything, and started moving upwards. And that's the time when the folk tale talks about the big deluge that happened in Sikkim and Darjeeling. And this deluge, this is the one I have taken from Darjeeling. And if you see, this whole area was covered with water, and people were dying, animals were dying, birds, insects, all, yeti, everyone was dying. And that's the time when everyone, human and non-human beings, sat on top of the mountain, this tendong or tunrok we call it. This particular, which we say the volcano hill, everybody says volcano hill, but this is a holy mountain for us. So in this mountain, actually they all came and they started praying to Idbudevu room again, and said, please, Edbudevu room, please save us. This water, Rangit is so angry. He is not willing to listen to anybody. And it is entire mountain is submerged with water. And by any moment, we will also be submerged soon. So please save us. And that's the time when uh when hill partridge or kohongfo, the bird which is there in our lecture flag, came down to Tendong and said, what is it you want, my dear? What is it you want? And everybody said, please save us. And that is the time Itbudepuram came in the form of a bird. So that's the time the creator said, please offer millet. Offer millet to this land. So this land was just not about cardamom or tea. It was also about millet. And then said, please offer. And that's the time the river Rangit will get, understand what he's done. And as it was doing that, people started offering, human and non-human beings started offering millet to the water. And some part of it fell on the chest of this bird. And that's why this bird has a white spot. And if you gently rub the chest, it smells of a millet, is what one of my knowledge keepers had said. Sonam Chirin Lepcha. And as he said that, and then the whole river Rangit realized that the millet actually helped him realize that what was the mistake that he had done. He looked around everywhere and then saw everything submerged, no mountains, no hill. And that's the time he said, like, oh, I have done a great mistake. I'm so sorry. There are so many times when we get angry and we've destroyed relationships and our nature. That's the time when River Rangi came down, and then everybody said, please say sorry to Rangnu. And as he was saying sorry to Rangnu, Rangnu smiled gently and said, only and if only you would have listened to what I had to say, my dear. It was never me who was late. Sorry, it was never me who was early. It was you who was late because you got this beautiful tutful, the bird, which was so attractive that it started speaking with so many people along the way, but it never really. And then you met a new friend. Sometimes the bird would sit on something, sometimes perch on a tree, sometimes have a friendly gossip. But then you did not realize that I was waiting. And that's also one of the reasons the river Rangit had this kind of, because it followed the way of bird. And then the river Rangniv said, you know what? Parilbu was like, as a snake, he floated into the water and he just made sure that I was there at the right time. Because if you really see the snake floating, it never really quivers. It actually flows as a straight body. So that's why the snakes, this one was like that of a snake. And together, and then the girl said, you know, your anger has destroyed so many beings and non-human beings that I will not, I cannot say I will forgive you, but I also do realize that our responsibility is not just that of our lovers, but that we are two rivers. We are going to give water downstream to so many human and non-human beings. So together we will flow as River Teesta. And I will actually take a round here. This is like a small island, which is not there anymore, but there's a small island. I'll take a round here and I'll make sure that we come together. But to appease your ego, I'll always flow below you. But you will always be the murky and dirty water for the anger that you have caused and the destruction that you have created to these Nimayalya. Whereas I, the river Rangnu, will always be blue and the green. And together we will flow as River Tista. And that's how they actually go down the river. And just to let you know, maybe it is born in Himalaya, like right in Cholamu in North Sikkim, but it goes down not just in West Bengal of Darjeeling and Kalimpong Hills, but it goes down right down to Bangladesh to go to Bay of Bengal. So these are the places where the golden mahsi used to come upstream to lay their eggs and up in the Himalaya. And the river Rangnu was so right, saying that we provide water to downstream. And just to kind of bring the story into the context of how it is transboundary and how we need to see the interconnectedness of these water, just also want to say that the Lepcha ritual is just not a Lepcha ritual. The Lepchas actually pray for the land and the water for everybody. The shamans, the Mun and Bungting, come down to the River Tista confluence for the safety of everybody. It's just not the Lepcha community. And they also kind of the shamans and the millet. The reason why we offer millet is not just for drinking purpose, but it is this particular crop, this particular millet is the one which saved the mankind from these lands, from these floods that we had gone through. And the shamans, the Mun and Bungting that we see, they are one of the from the lowest strata of our community. They are the ones who are marginalized, and they sit by the riverbank, praying for the people, for the land, for the animals, fish, everybody, medicinal plants. So the protection, so that they are actually the people living in Darjeeling, Sikkim, and Kalimpong Hills are protected. And uh, the reason why all these shamans come is because they have a medium to speak with the non-human beings. We as human beings have lost the language, have lost the conversation with the nature. But these conduit or the mediators are the ones who connect with the land, and that's why they come to the confluence or any water body. It's just not the Tista confluence. What lakes, like I said, the Chu, the Lep, that's why they actually go and pray for the safety of all the beings. But however, saying that, we have around about 47 dams proposed around these areas. The Teesta River folklore that I talk about now remains just a myth, something which is like Dante Katha, like the stories which is told by the elders, but doesn't have any truth. But like you see, there are around about in West Bengal itself, you see hydro projects, the Kalijora and the Satai Mile and Dikchu Dam. So all these dams have not only taken the color and the shape of the river, but it actually has taken away the essence of what we are talking about right now. And just to kind of bring into the context of today's topic, how we are talking about non-human beings and our relationships. Late Pem Dorji Lepcha was the shaman who used to go to the Chekra or village in West Bengal, who used to stay there and used to actually look up to the river and pray so that there's no sickness coming towards these lands up in the upstream. So he used to make sure that he used to protect, the rituals that he used to have was for the protection of our people and people residing in Sikkim and Darjeeling. It was just not the Lepcha people. And this particular ritual was also very important because this used to be done with, like it was an interconnectedness with also like even the Chogel, the king of that time. So the reverence that, this ritual that even the king had. But now he passed away in 2000, I think around 12 or 13. He had a very small shack of house, and he did not have enough money to really take care of himself, and he just passed away in 4 days because he was actually said, like, you bring, it's almost like you're bringing, you are creating, because that particular village was also like a village which had a lot of different religion. So he was actually said like, oh, you bring a lot of sickness to this village, and your ritual is not good enough. And that's how he was misunderstood, and he passed away. I wouldn't say he passed away because of that, because I wouldn't know. I came to know from Tagzen Lepcha, the person who actually was also cinematographer for Dogbu. So he passed away, and now the ritual is, right now we don't know who is doing this ritual, who is taking care of the ritual. And yeah, having said that, I will pass it on to Jenny to bring the context of what the significance of rituals that we have. Yeah.
Thank you, Minket, for introducing the River Teesta and setting the tone. I will just share my screen. So before I begin, I would like to, so I'll be talking about risk, vulnerability, and the role of ritual and shamans within this. But before I start, I would like to introduce the knowledge keepers and religious specialists that shared this knowledge with me and actually introduced me to the Mutanchi perspectives on the interrelation between human nature and other than human beings, and especially also to the role of the shaman in assessing this risk and mitigating the risk, which I will explain later. But I just wanted to kind of show who the people were who are sharing their knowledge. So very on top is Minket Lepcha. He was the Bungthing in Zongu, the Sepadim, who did all the rituals in Lingtem village at the time. He passed this year in spring, sadly. Then we have Dorji Chiring Lepcha, who was the Pidim from Payel. And then Kinchog Lepcha, who is currently the oldest shaman in Zongu. He is in Pentong. And then last but not least is Samduk Dasho Lepcha, who was known as the Konchin Bungthing. So his clan, the Chu of his clan was the Konchin, the deity residing in Konchin itself. And he also had ancestral lineage that connected him with the supernatural being that lived in Kanchenjunga. So he was perceived a very powerful guardian. He sadly passed in the aftermath of the earthquake in 2011, in an afterquake. So my introduction to the topic of risk, disaster, and ritual actually happened in 2011 whilst I was doing my PhD research. And there was a severe earthquake that hit North Sikkim. And the epicenter was very close to where I was doing my research. These are the roads up to North Sikkim that were no roads anymore. So I remember when I was in the aftermath of the earthquake, when I was up in North Sikkim, I met the Padim of Linja, so the shaman of Linja, one of the affected areas. And he was running past me. He's like, I have no time. I've got to do lots of rituals. I have no time to talk to you. He did introduce the topic quickly, but he kind of ran off because he was very, very, very busy. So this is where I got interested. So why is everyone doing rituals now? So this is kind of my introduction to why I even started asking about what do natural disasters have to do with rituals, and why do we do rituals after natural disasters, and what is their role in preventing them. So in Lepcha religious epistemology is about managing nature. albeit the logic is different than what we would when we come from a perspective of development or environmental protection. We take on a different ontology. So within Lepcha religious epistemology, it is about building a reciprocal relationship between self, society, and the other than human beings that also live among the people and the natural landscape. So, and these communications, this reciprocity is required to negotiate prosperity, health, and welfare. And so within this approach to the world, or these thought frameworks, ritual is one of the chosen mechanisms to balance and mitigate risk. And these are not stagnant. This is something I really want to say, but develop with the nature and the histories and the incidents that happen around the environment. An example which I stumbled across is for example, in Lingtem Panang, which is up in Zongo, there was a devastating flood that happened in the mid-19th century. It is recorded in one of the colonial writings by Hooker. And there was still a ritual done until a few years ago when the shaman that did it passed away, that commemorated that incident, that reminded of that incident, and that protected the area based on that incident. So this is just to say that it is not something that is stagnant, these rituals, but they grow with disasters, with things that have happened around them. So after kind of being introduced to this, I started to look at community rituals from this perspective. So what do they have to do with vulnerability, and how do they help? And the two main rituals that are performed for the entire community, there's of course lots of other rituals, but the two main ones that protect the village communities and their livestock and the village itself in Zongo are Chirim and Sadopramfat. So Sadopramfat can be described as the water management ritual. In Rongring, the language of the Mutanchi, Sotap means hail. But the ritual is not merely about hail. It is about protecting the village, the crops, all the livestock from natural disasters that are somehow connected with water. Thunderstorms, too much rain, too little rain. So it is more than just hail. But it happens in every year around February, March time, when there are usually a lot of thunderstorms in the region and hailstorms. Then Chirim is the ritual that protects the village, the livestock, the crops, but also the land against diseases. So this addresses the risk of illnesses, of pandemics, like we recently had one. And but it also is done to avert quarrels, social unrest, any form of other harm. That is not weather related in that sense. For that, Sotopramfat is there is a reason why the shamans are the mediators, which I have no time to go into here, but just to put it in a very, very brief summarized form, there is a mythological pact between the Mun and the Bunthing, so the shamans, and the more than human beings, that it is a contract of respect and caretaking, one that also binds them to mutual obligations of regular interactions, of regular checking in on each other, and it is basically ensuring the survival within the lands. So this has, if I had time, I could tell the story behind it and the mythological narrative, but we will go on from here. So these two annual rituals are protect the village communities. And to do that, the shaman will summon first the supreme deity that resides in Kanchenjunga, Ni Kanchenponu, as he says, the holy Kanchen king. And then he will call upon all the Liang Dok Ung Dok. In Rongring, Liang means land, Dok means the protector or the owner. So these are the more than human beings that reside in the land. And these local deities, so these Liangdok, Undok, they will be residing in various places, be they hillocks, water sources, rivers, bamboo groves, and so forth. And they are often connected to specific clans, to ancestry, to lineages. So they connect the people today with the land, with the environment, so the plants, the animals, but and also with the ancestry, so with the lineage into the past. And this is a map that I tried to make. It's very schematic, also because to not specifically show the exact area, but basically these are all the Liangdog Ungdog, besides Kanchenchu, which is further away. These are the village protective deities of one village in Zhonglu, of Lingtem village. And the shaman will first activate, as you see here, we have the 1 and then the 2. So he kind of spirals in a pairing of the deities from the outside protectors to the inside. So it's kind of like drawing a protective line and activating the more than human beings that live in these places to protect the village from disease or from hail, or depending on which ritual they are doing. And for those more interested in the details of Lepcha religious epistemology, pairing is something that goes through the entire ritual speech. And actually, it's called akep in Lepcha, and the sentences align in what they call ringshok. And so this rhyming is basically the rhythm of the ritual speech. And it is, I would say, a fundamental philosophical aspect of Lepcha ontology, which I also can't go into right now. But this was more just to show you how the actual process of activating these more than human beings to protect the village happens. So performing rituals is essential along this Mutanchi thought framework to mitigate risk and protection. For example, this is Bay Village. After the earthquake happened in 2011, there was a massive landslide that buried the village, and there was some people did die, but a lot of villages were saved. So the Padim of Pentong, when we were talking about the destruction in Bay Village, he very clearly said they didn't perform the rituals. So we cannot stop the earthquake from happening. I will get back to that later, but the protective deities need to, if they are not respected, if they are not, then they will not protect. So within his understanding of risk, understanding of disaster that the shaman shared with me, if you do not honor the contract with the other people that live there, then they will also not extend their protection. They might not harm you, but they will definitely not protect you, is how he described it to me. And according to him, there was still mercy, because in Bay Village, what happened was that the majority of villages were in one house for a 49-day ceremony, and the landslide split above that house, and actually the majority of people were not in the respective other houses. So as an example of what risk and vulnerability means from this perspective. So how do we then know that rituals were successful? How do we know these interactions were acknowledged by the other than human beings? So basically by nothing happening. When a ritual is successful, it means 1 year, there are no diseases, there are no destruction, there are no hailstorms. There are certain rituals that include egg predictions, where depending on how the egg looks, that would also go into too much detail, the shaman can already say, oh, this was not favorable, there is still something wrong, there might still be something happening, or, oh no, this was accepted favorably. So there are other mechanisms to check up on it. But so I can again explain the logic based on the earthquake. So in Lepcha mythology, the earthquake is caused by Matliponu. Matliponu was created when the world was created. And he, by his nature, does not stand still. He cannot stand still. And his elder brother, Kanchenchu, was placed on him to pin him down. So the earthquake in that sense cannot be prevented. The Matlipunu will shake. That is in his nature to do that. But according to Lepcha epistemology, Kanchenchu is the one, and all the other Liangdok, Ungdok, that pin the deity down, Matlipunu down. So if they don't do that, the earth will shake. Then there's another layer of protection on it. Even if the earth shakes, the respective local deities more than human beings can still protect the village during the shaking. So just to come to an end, I would like to throw open some thoughts on environmental destruction in infrastructure projects that Minket has also introduced, and the other than human beings. So dams, roads, all kinds of infrastructure projects take an impact on the land. So they also destroy several abodes. So for example, the road that was built up to Pentong destroyed one abode of a deity. Blasting for the dam made a lake leak. So the development projects, they shape and alter the place. However, if we look at the ritual complex that I've just explained, there is not necessarily a causality that destruction leads to angering of the deities, leads to a disaster or the lack of protection. The ritual, and this is quite important, is the tool within the thought framework that these shamans have shared with me. That is the communication tool with the more than human beings. So they activate processes of communication, of basically telling them, look, we might be blasting here, or we are going to build a house, or we're going to go hunting, and this harm was going to happen, and seeking permission to do that. So it is basically about balancing things, reciprocity in how we interact with each other, or they interact between the people and all the other residents of the space that are non-human. And so just to summarize quickly, within this Mutanchi indigenous thought framework, ritual action is about negotiating living within this precarious and fragile environmental space. It is a practice that has been passed down from the ancestors to interact with, and this is again, we don't need to believe it or not believe it, but within that thought framework with beings that also share the space. And their abodes, so the trees, the plants, the rivers. And now the question can arise, what does that mean in today's world? Does anyone still believe in that? Going back to my example in the very beginning, that the Linjabung thing was extremely busy doing rituals within the village context where I was. Yes, people really still do draw on these thought frameworks and on these epistemologies. Not always, of course, but contextually they do. And ritualized action has also been applied in building large-scale development projects. Like, for example, before they started the initial drilling of the Panang hydro project, which is based in Zongo, shaman was called to perform a ritual to ask permission from the Liangdok Ungdok if they could do the building. And this I'm mentioning because such an application of ritual was contested within the Mutanchi community at the time. And I feel it requires more thought. And that's also something to kind of discuss in future. So it was perceived locally in two ways. There were those people who felt that this ritual being organized showed that a respect for Mutanchi processes of interacting and for their beliefs, whereas others felt that it was an instrumentalization of their practices for larger capitalist projects. And without positioning myself there anywhere, currently one can say indigenous conceptualizations of living with the land are included in policymaking, usually as traditional environmental knowledge, which would be, for example, their knowledge on plants. But it does not usually include these processes of interactions and reciprocity that I was talking about today. And when rituals are done, the question is, how seriously are they taken, or is it really just an action placed within a modernist development paradigm to convince the indigenous people that these projects are safe? So I don't have answers to these things. I just feel that, and I'm also not saying that all religious aspects should fall into policy. It is more about questioning which thought frameworks and philosophies could be included, and how do we respect them, and how do we respect these processes, is something that we've been thinking about, and which I'm sort of throwing out there. And it also has a lot to do with intention, with the intention of the people using ritual action, and under which intention is it done. And this being said, I don't know how much time we still have. I will want to pass over to Minket to show us her insights after she visited the areas of the most recent disaster that has happened in this region, the Glacier Lake outburst flood. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'll pass on the word to you, Minket.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny, and really, really appreciate the amazing work that you've done in the past. And I think also like just I remember like how like this kind of rituals are like, I mean, at least that was my experience of how um the instrumentalization of these rituals sometimes kind of come into this political forum also, and that's something which we need to be careful of. Like you said, the intention of why we are even doing the ritual. So I just kind of these are the photos by John Lepcha, and I had not gone there, and just this is right after the dam burst. I think 3 4 days after the dam burst, and just to kind of bring you the context of the damages that happened last year. And though I was away, but I could see a lot of photographs, and the bridges that you see, these are the small bridges, the only bridge that was connecting the community, because these are areas which is the roads are not the roads are precarious, and also not just the road, but it's also the whole landscape. And because of that, the only connection is the bridges, and so these bridges were gone, and a lot of people actually had to flee. The roads were stretching, the roads were actually literally getting detached. But a lot of the people from there, not was just people from the place, but there are a lot of migrant workers there who were actually not just stranded, but also lost their lives. And especially with the migrant workers, what happens is there's not enough like a record of how many people are coming, because there are many people, migrant from the downstream communities, are coming upstream to actually build houses for the play people, and just the road and all that. So there's no count of how many people actually have lost their lives. Yeah, and these are some pictures I just wanted to quickly share, how like it was the children, it was the women and the elders who actually had a lot of issues. And the second part of it is people talk about the damage, the infrastructure damage, but there were a lot of like dynamites, and because it's like Chungtang is in an area where which a lot of surrounded by army people, and a lot of dynamites flowed with the water, and you could actually hear and see blasts happening downstream of the river belt, and it was equally dangerous. And just to kind of bring the context of this was last year. I mean, these are pictures that John had sent me, and how the whole like even this silt has entered the whole of this houses and all that. So when I went this time, it was the same, nothing much had changed. So just kind of after 1 year, because I had done a little bit of a fundraising, and just to kind of distribute the materials, I had distributed around about 21 torchlight in a place like Naga. So this is a place, and what I came to know through Sange Lepcha, who was from Singik or around this area, I came to know that this whole village was coming down, and it was people were getting evacuated. People were actually they had to really move to another place. Children were getting evacuated while I was doing one workshop. So when I went to this place, I took this photo from Chungtang, and while I was for the relief material. I just wanted to see how does the village looks like from the other side of the mountain, and I could see a lot of these electric lines that was there, and also the roads were being built, and so many people were actually talking about how the landslide was being caused by building a lot of roads around it, and of course this kind of infrastructure that you see, and the whole I was actually there when all these people were evacuating. So you can see this is not, I'm not talking about 2023, I'm talking about 2024, June, July. So these houses were coming down. So I kind of asked them like, why do you think like this was happening? And one of the residents of that place was talking about, people are talking about the compensation and how people have not received compensation. But here the important part is like we also have to see the landscape and how the water is speaking in its own way, and there are like impended disasters that is to happen in these landscapes if you do not really understand the landscape and not just look into from the compensation perspective, is because this particular side of the mountain is rocky. This side of the mountain is a little bit loose soil. So when the water gushed out last year with that flow, it actually hit this side of the Rocky Mountain, and the water actually pushed inside this soft soil. And because of that, almost 1 year of like this whole current of water changed in such a way that this particular place was actually, the villages started coming down. And yes, people were talking about how they have started building roads. And there was one place which is a road leading towards the Nathula Pass. I think they're building that road. And there was one of the very sacred spaces that got destroyed while they were building the road. And people did talk about how they did not respect the sacred space also. So while I was looking at these images, I mean, I was just, it's something that really struck me was is like God's really angry, just to see these holy scriptures outside and people were just kind of moving out. And this is in Zongu. I had to cross this bridge around about 250 approximately feet long, made by the Lepcha people from Zongu. And this the times when there was no bridges. I think even our Lachen people made some wooden bridge, but this was a very, very scary bridge that was made, and the only connection at that moment last year at that point where the rations and a lot of food and even the sick people were, this was the mode of transportation for them. And it's still the main transportation, though there's another road from I think lower Higatang, but this is the road that you can see that man holding this cylinder and crossing the bridge. And I also had to do it. And but it's just not the whole idea of 250 feet long bridge, but the knowledge that the community had, and what came about was not the hospitals or people coming for rescue, but the local community was a solution for their own problem. So that was something which I would like to acknowledge and reiterate, because we need to really bring that into context, and so that people can come for solutions, can come and help, but they can help themselves, to be honest. And I was like, this is the place when I was going to Naga, and everybody was talking about this is a very holy, like it's like a cave inside, and there were a lot of, you can see a lot of scriptures, or not the scriptures, but like, stones which are very sacred. And as I was passing by, and they were saying that this is going to fall off anytime, and as I was monitoring when I was away after I gave the relief material, I actually, Sange, was my contact person, was showing me these videos and showing me this landscape. And to see this landscape fall was something really affected me, like as if the sacred is not in the landscape anymore, as if the deities were really getting angry and they were leaving. And this kind of really affected me. And having said that, that was the Sikkim part of it, but coming to the West Bengal side, because like often there's people are talking about Teesta and Sikkim, but there is a West Bengal part of the river Teesta, and there is a Bangladesh part of Teesta too. So it's not like separate. And I stayed overnight in this place, and you can see that how the siltation has the after effect of the flood. It was not this year, but it was last year. So the flood, the siltation was still there. And while I was doing a workshop, I could see that people were drilling the mountain for the railway line too. And in spite of massive landslide, massive flood, even Zongu had a cloud burst recently in this year too. The landscapes are still getting like it's very vulnerable, but the infrastructure development work is still going on. And this is when West Bengal, did you see, like this is in Teesta Bazaar. This was a drone shot that was taken by Praveen, and how you could see how the whole house was submerged, and the roads is equally like gone. It was there. But this context that why I'm trying to show you these images, and I'm sure you have seen it, is all to say like the water does not have boundary. It kind of affects both Sikkim and West Bengal and Bangladesh. And what I have observed is that it is not a disaster of the nature. It is the disaster of the human communication, inability to communicate with one another, inability to actually respect and acknowledge the knowledge of one another, and inability to even see these disasters actually affecting the marginalized community. So much so, like in West Bengal, I came to know that there were, I think, around 2000, like there is a Teesta bazaar, there's a Teesta market, and people from Kalimpong came down, almost 10 political parties came down to have this whole announcement of Teesta Bachao Andolan. So they were talking about saving the Teesta, but they were not actually talking about the entire downstream community or West Bengal, because the government had actually given funds to Sikkim, but not in West Bengal. So they were people were talking about it. But so these people came and said, we want to save the Teesta Bachao Andolan. But they were just talking about the Teesta market. They were not talking about the Rambi. They were not talking about Malli. So most of the communities were saying like this Teesta Bachao Andolan is only talking about that particular village, so our market, or which is just 2000 people. So this kind of miscommunication and the political propaganda that goes on out there is kind of very, very precarious for the marginalized communities, because till now there are around about 11 houses which are not got, they're staying in it is they're being camped out, they don't have a place even in a place like Mali. So these are, some things which I needed to share. And even in Zongo right now, they are still suffering. The road is still like through that bridge, although there is another road, but then that's the main communication. And people are not just talking about people are just not looking into the mental health trauma that goes with these communities, because they're still affected. It's not like we talk about our elders used to say, like, after 12 years the water will return, para barsama pani parkincha. So that is how they used to say. And the fact that they're talking about permanent solution on a river is something which really it's a thing to think about. But putting it in a context of, since I have been doing a lot of storytelling, and I've been collecting pictures from children who tell stories of, after I tell the story, I tell them, what is your story? What is it that you want to say? I want to bring into the context that children are the hope for our future generation is the hope, because what they did, what they shared was like these two rivers had a fight, these two rivers had a problem, but what really got them together was the love. And I think this is a reminder where these children were not just talking about river, they were talking about mountains, they were talking about cloud, they were talking about rain, they were talking about springs, because river cannot be river without the spring waters. And they were talking about rain was how we need to connect with one another, how we need to acknowledge each other's knowledge and community, and not politicize it, and not have an ethnic political background to it. And they were talking about all these children coming together, saying like there are animals too, there are birds too, and most of the time they talk about animals more than humans. So my question here is like, what happens when we become old? Why do we forget the animals, the golden masid? Why do we forget the medicinal plants, the rhododendron? Why do we forget utis, or Nepalensis alnus? So this is a very cute drawings that I wanted to show you, just to tell you like, these are the future whom we are going to leave this landscape, right? So these are the children who are going to live in this land. So how are we going to protect them? what are the things that they want to say. So how can we be good ancestors? This is a very important, because the rituals that Jenny explained is not just a lepcha identity related ritual, but it is a ritual for the landscape by these shamans and Monbung. So just to kind of bring in this note of like how that this is a river that I had shot that I'd taken in 2014, and this is how the river has changed. So when I narrate the folklore, I mean, the colors, the river is both the rivers are muddy, so that explains a lot. And just the last two slides. This was in 2015. I had taken this shot when I was shooting the film Voices of Teesta. It's available online, so you guys can look up. And but just to kind of bring the context of, I had reached Chungtang in 15th of August, and this was the first time that I saw a river flowing like this. Just wanted to share. I think I need to share the sound. Just a second. I probably would want to share the sound because it's important. Yeah. So just to this is the last slide, so Susmita. I think I'm getting delayed, but yeah, just to bring the context of everybody when I was there, they said this is what the river used to flow, how it used to flow. This is the confluence of Lachinchu and Lachinchu and Lachungchu. So these two confluence is where the Chungtang. This is the river, and this is for the first time I saw such a beautiful river on 15th of August 2024. And while the whole community was celebrating Independence Day, I was wondering what independence means for us, because for me this river was free. For me this river was flowing, but the community was talking about how they will be building a dam again with Greenco, the private stakeholder, taking 60% of the stake, and kind of rebuilding the dam. And also to say, like, having said, like, Chungtang, which is the stage I think this is stage 5, not stage 5, stage 3, was promised as one of the most prolific, gigantic, ambitious project for India, which will be providing water, not the electricity, and how this particular part of the landscape will be really developed. But to say like even the dam kind of has a life shelf of 100 years, but to let it to see the destruction in 7 years is something for us to think about, and for us to understand what really free means. And stage 4, the Lepcha community from Zongo has been fighting for a very long time, and it is their resistance and their willpower that has really inspired me to talk about this for such a long time. But just to say, like, we need a kind of support from not just the lecture community, but from all the communities in the landscape. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Minket and Jenny, for this very enlightening talk. So I'll open it up, and I think maybe if anyone wants to put something on chat, or we can maybe just raise our hands and have questions. Okay, so Twisha has raised her hand. So Twisha, maybe if you can start.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the loveliest presentations, Minkit and Jenny, and also for the stories that you have shared with us. I had two questions. One of them was, in this period of increasing climate and environmental disasters that are happening in vulnerable regions, either in the mountains or in smaller islands where there are a lot of indigenous communities that have rituals, what kind of, incongruence or imbalances are you noticing within the community where rituals were supposed to protect the people and the land and the mountains, but with increasing disasters that are happening because of people in power, not just locally but globally, what kind of understanding is formed within the community, and how are they being perceived? There's a global, large scale, repeated amount of disasters, number one. And my second question is, where do you see care and healing come in as a form of mitigating this risk through the rituals and stories that you have seen? What were ways of, perhaps in your stories or in your research, you must have heard about ways of healing for the land and communities. What kind of new instances are you noticing with this increasing climate and environmental disasters? These are to either of you. Anyone who could answer them would. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Twisha. Minket, do you want to respond to one or the other? Or
I can, yeah, you can just start and we can just pull in wherever. Yeah.
I think to the first question, how people are reacting was the question, no, to the large-scale disasters that are happening. I think there's no like one image of how people are reacting, or one way in which how people are reacting. I feel that there is in certain sections of the community, there is an increased interest in, or increased falling back, maybe is the wrong word, but increased using of practices like ritual, an increased kind of awareness of that interactions with environment need to be developed differently and increase, whereas I feel there's also an increased sense of despair and an increased sense of not really knowing what to do, because how can you do something? It's such a small part of the world. People feel very, so I feel there's no exact way how people, like one way how people are reacting to this. I don't know, Minket, you were there in the aftermath, so you probably have like more recent reactions to, or 1 year afterwards, after the flood, how people were reacting to it. I do feel there is still a lot of trauma and fear that things will repeat itself again. Yeah.
So I think it's something which is a great frustration for me, because I feel like how people react is like almost like I can see the oil on top of the water. It's like that. So there is this whole intellectual conversation that happens around disaster, and how people are intellectualizing disaster and having a lot of articles and papers and like even webinar that goes on. But on the realistic level, the people on the marginalized level are struggling every day, and the failure to even to see the advocacy not really seeping into the solution. It's just a short-term solutions that people come and relief, and people are coming during the disaster, but even to see the disaster as a long-term effect, I don't see it. And I mean, even NGOs and all that, they are coming for reliefs, but then there is not enough conversation happening about how we can actually look into this as a holistic way of looking at solutions. So I'm grateful to Anugyalai, the NGO that I'm working with in Darjeeling, which is kind of giving me these updates. And till now, they were telling me like how the community is still suffering, and they are still like Achal Tamung, she's the lady who I was in touch with, talks about how like people are not coming. It's just either like the political propaganda, or they have motives with political ambition, or they have something with, okay, they are coming and doing the research, but the community still remains there, right? So there is not kind of, I feel like it's like basically a stark difference between the oil and water. And so I don't know, they're different. This kind of conversation has to have a common language. It has to meet somewhere, but don't know where really. So I'm still like, and I probably will answer the second question, and probably Jenny, you can add on to it. I think the healing, especially because I conducted a couple of workshops when I was there, and what I could feel is one is the lack of platform to come together. There is no platform for people to come together and talk about it without making an agenda. Either it can be, it's not a political agenda, it's not got to do with intellectualizing the conversation, but just coming and sharing together. And it need not be politically driven community, but community which connects with the Teesta. So there is an event which I had created, which is called Teesta Connect, where people just came and made a batch together. So it was a simple activity of making the batch together, but that itself was a healing for them. So I think how I feel it's across now, indigenous people have become the badges of climate solution. How, fortunately, unfortunately, where we don't have a knowledge and half of the lands are gone and half of the language is gone. But I think the most important part here is to come together as humans and kind of bring that whole aspect of solidarity. And I use the term riverhood because I think we are connected with river, whether we like it or not. We will be affected by river, whether we like it or not, whether the ritual happens or not. So the lack of platform to come together, one, and second part of it is the lack of uh, the healing also can come if we can probably give a benefit of doubt and trust. We have lost trust from each other. I mean, it upstream, downstream, be it anything. And there are very, very, very few people with that glimmer of hope who comes and says, hey, I really want to listen to your story. I really want to learn from this story. I don't, not making some intellectualizing and making a research paper out of it, but I want to learn from what you have said. What is the story means for you? So the reflection that they take is something I feel like comes with surrender to the ego, surrender to the fact that you are small, there are more than human being creatures there. And so that humbleness. So these are something which is very, very common, right? This is some terms which are very common, but to practice it is so difficult. And when I went this time, I think the biggest disaster that I saw was the human communication. So it should begin with just letting go of like surrender to the nature and say, let's see, let's talk. So, and yeah, Jenny, you can add on to
Don't really have much to add on. I would agree that the fact that it's very hard to talk about what fragility means, what disaster means, what development should mean in these parts of the world, and have a constructive healing kind of discourse where all different views are looked at, because it's just become so taboo to actually speak about it. So I feel that really hinders healing, but it also hinders solutions, like both of your questions actually, Trisha. It prevents solution orientated, but also healing orientated platforms from happening. Yeah.
Okay. We do have time for maybe one more question. If people are thinking, I can put one, and it's a little bit more towards Jenny. And when you were talking about this, the ritual as a contract, not to that things can be avoided, but that the mountains will not harm you and so on. And I was thinking about how after the Gulf in the north especially, there is a lot of resentment about the scientists who had apparently gone to survey the South Lonak Lake, right? And I visited Zongo after, and even like going up to Chungthang, and people would talk about this. It's the scientists who went, they did not seek permission, they did not do the rituals, and they went and surveyed that lake. So then how do we think about this? And that very much fits what you're talking about, that it's not about against a certain intervention, but whether the intervention was part of a premeditated contract or not. So then how do we think of these instances where also ire is directed towards say something like a scientific survey of a lake, effective, ineffective, how it was. And Minket, if you can also answer that question.
I feel here it is a lot about intention and communication processes that that happen. Like it's not the first time that I'm hearing, I mean, over the entire Himalayas, the problem of research groups coming in, and especially with holy spaces and sacred lakes, and then something happens, and the local communities are enraged about it, or worried about it. And I feel like that is everything to do with also engaged research. Like if you go in there and the local community doesn't know you're going in there, then the premises of your research hasn't you haven't started your communication in the right place before you went there. There should have been processes beforehand. This is my opinion, where the research is placed to the local communities. This is happening. These are, you know, our ideas, intentions. What are your needs? What would your intentions be? How can we go and do research up there that respects your interaction processes with the environment, with the land? I feel like, I mean, not that all miscommunication could be solved by that, but I do feel if these the local decision makers and the communities and the shamans are also included in research processes, and also see outcomes of it, but also the needs are aligned with what their needs are. And especially I feel like now in the case of the Glof, actually monitoring the lake would have been something that would benefit anyone in the community. I mean, that is clearly feel like if how things are how such research is are implemented, and with which intent and with which communication structures is a big question here. I mean, a big I mean, would be my answer to your question. That is how these things can be prevented. Yeah, I don't know, Minket, if you want to add anything to that.
I think it's good. Yeah, it's fine. I think it's just not because we're running out of time. I can talk forever, but there's some.
Maybe I can pose the last question as well, Minket, and you could answer both of them together. So the very last question here we have from Sudip Chakravarti, who says, do you find younger people connecting with oral histories, nature and stories, and even aspects of shamanism as a way to understand their roots or even a process of healing? So because you ended also with the youth, maybe we could take this question as our last question.
Yeah. I think it's really sad, like so much of responsibility goes on to the youth when we have not really taught them, right? So when it's like there are people who are interested in the story, but they do not understand the ecosystem of or the gravity of the ritual, or like how important are these rituals for the landscape, because they are never taught to, from the young age, they're never taught to go back to their land and learn. They're actually, the whole education teaches us to move away from the land. It never teaches us to go and seek your own understanding of what geography is by going to the riverside next to your house. So we are known. So that's why we are actually been having a knowledge production of producing children who are not really understanding what this landscape mean. So to kind of bring, because it's kind of connected with another one, another question on the top, is to kind of somehow all of a sudden say like you are responsible for, you know, the disaster and the vulnerability because you are not, you have to go back, is something which I feel like it's a basically an outcome of a pattern that we have created. So to kind of bring interest on these children based on what we have created is something which I feel it's not fair. And second part of it is like they are interested in the stories, but the most important part is the intergenerational knowledge that passes down. So these shamans that we are talking about, they are also being born. New shamans are being born, new healers are being born. But for them not to understand that they are healers and they are actually the medicine men and women is also because they don't have an ecosystem to talk about it. Like that's the reason why these stories kind of become an aid for them to understand themselves, but they are not, like there are no platform as such to talk about it, right? Because oral history is just a subject in a course. So oral history is living for us. What I did is oral history, but they are so away from their land. They are, because they want to get good education, they want to speak in English, they want to kind of get jobs. So because of that, this kind of there are two-eyed seeing that we call it, right? So one is the Western science, but then there is also indigenous science. The failure of looking at indigenous knowledge as a science is something that we are lacking. And how Jenny talked about how the knowledge keepers needs to be in these lobby of, like, you know, policymakers. But then unless and until we don't have these shamans, medicine men, and women coming into the education system, policymakers, I don't think the younger generation is gonna be interested, because there are very few of them who are actually interested in it. But my main concern is that they are new shamans which is being born, but they don't have an ecosystem to grow. And that's one of the reasons sometimes they are said they are mad, they are schizophrenic, and that creates a lot of it disrupts the intergenerational knowledge. And that's why it creates disaster and vulnerability, because the the rituals are going with the elders, the younger ones are not there. So it's a concern, it's a big concern. But I don't think it's not them, it's us, that we have to create an environment for them to feel safe for the fact that they are shamans and healers. And second is create platform for the knowledge keepers to get a respect, which I think we have deeply lacked in our lobby, or kind of forums. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have now run out of time, and since it's quite late in India, and Minket probably would want to go back to sleep. So
Oh, I don't.
thank you so much for your very enlightening talk and very thought-provoking. It gives us a lot to think about rituals and the importance of indigenous stories and indigenous ways of thinking about the landscape, protecting it, and thinking of how do we think of care not as this kind of ephemeral or non-changing sort of perspective, but how do indigenous perspectives engage with contemporary questions, contemporary disasters. So thank you so much, and thank you to our audience for listening in, and
Yeah,
everybody
thank you
have
so
a good
much to
night.
everyone for coming.
Thank you
Thanks.
everyone for coming, and thank you for the platform.
Thank you for the platform, Suchusmita. Thank you, Jenny.